We've all at some point sat there and thought to ourselves, where has Halo Infinite gone wrong? Will Halo Infinite ever go back to where it needs to be? And are 343 and Microsoft actually working on something in the background besides Halo Infinite? We've heard a lot of rumours floating around the tinterweb for a long time now, speculating that 343 Industries have scrapped Halo Infinite's 10-year plan all the way back in January, and that Microsoft are just not happy with 343 and the way that this franchise has been managed, and the way Halo Infinite has performed. This video is going to be absolutely jam-packed with information, rumours from industry insiders, and essentially do a little bit of detective work for ourselves and put together a case as to why I personally think that Halo Infinite is being supported by a skeleton staff crew currently, whilst the majority of 343 Industries are working on Halo's new IP, which will be coming rumoured between 2025 and 2027. Now, yes, a lot of people are going to say that these sources are all trust me bro. Some very well might be, but it's not directly the sources that I'm putting weight on in this video. It's the quantity of stories that are all the same, coming from completely different outlets and all worded completely differently. And the actions that Microsoft are taking, which suggests that there are some validity to some of these different reports and conversations. Look, I'm not sitting here and telling you for sure that this is all true, but the information does all add up when you listen to it. Don't shoot the messenger, please, when you're trying to type your comments down below. Everyone watching this video deserves to know exactly what is happening with Halo, including myself. Like, this is a franchise which has built a large portion of the gaming community, and the community from back then is still here now, waiting for these new games, the additions of the story, and just wanting to have a good Halo experience, but we just haven't been delivered that with Halo Infinite and arguably Halo 5 as well. Everybody deserves to know what is going on with this game. So all I'm simply doing is breaking down the facts that we've had from reports, from insiders, and of course directly from 343, Joseph Staten, Microsoft, Phil Spencer, everything like that, and detailing up to this point as to where we are currently. From that point, you can decide for yourself exactly what you think has happened with Halo Infinite, just from the facts that we've spoken about in this video, and of course some of the rumours and leaks that have also been mentioned too. But without further ado, let's dive straight in. I think first of all it would only make sense to start with the development and then work our way to present day. This will give everyone an idea of exactly what's happened in the previous 2 years of Halo Infinite and of course the beginning of development around 2016. As discussed in many previous videos around Halo Infinite's overall hellish development, we know that Halo Infinite's development began around 2016 or give or take, and was just absolutely horrendous, with reports from developers who had left the company stating that the team were working on almost 4 different separate versions of Halo Infinite at one given time, resulting in it just to not fit the overall story narrative, and for the majority of those 4 versions of the game to be scrapped entirely. 343 Industries were also developing a brand new engine for Halo Infinite, which is the Slipspace Engine. You know, the engine that 343 were hyping up to the nines when it was created and announced when this game was essentially revealed to the world, saying that it was perfect for Halo Infinite's live story, allowing them to add features in whenever they wanted to suit the narrative and the store and whatever it might be. Well, in some cases, or the initial vision of this engine, that could have well and truly been the case, but the version that Halo Infinite was built on was apparently just not that at all. Halo Infinite was rumoured to be built on the Slipspace engine, or a version of this engine that wasn't necessarily up to the standard in which it was initially envisioned by the team that created and developed this engine. Now, whether this is completely accurate, again, take it with a pinch of salt, but from the amount of people that I've seen mention this as well around the engine, and the potential to move to a new engine for new projects surprises me, so this must have some validity in some way. Now, what you do need to remember around 343 and the Slipspace engine is that 343 were creating this engine from complete scratch for a console that wasn't even out or announced at the time. Of course, they know what it is, they know the hardware specifications because they are basically under Microsoft, aren't they? So they would have been given those details to create the technology and the infrastructure to support that engine and that console when it does initially arrive. However, developing and testing for that may not have been easy, and I couldn't have imagined that it would have been. But we know what the changes to different infrastructure, to, the complications of making new hardware actually is. So a lot of things for this Xbox might have been changing consistently. In the first 6 months, they might say that this is the set amount of capacity that this console is going to have, and then within that 6-month period decide that actually maybe it's not enough, or maybe it's too much and it's overkill, so they now reduce it or they increase it. And that actually hinders the overall development of this engine and what this game is going to perform like on the console, because it's not out yet, so it's not like they can just plug in an Xbox One X or Series S and play that way. However, it wasn't only this. Diving back into Microsoft and their contractor policies, a contractor or an agency worker are set on contracts around 18 months or so, give or take. Some can be renewed and carried on for a longer period of time. However, if an organization, for example, doesn't meet the quota or their earning records have fallen for that particular calendar year or quarter, what's the best way to make money back? It's rather selling assets or removing employees. Now, I'm not saying this is what happened, but this is just typically what a business would do and that have done. And typically, an organization will target contractors as a first point of call, just because you can terminate a contract whenever you want to if you are a contractor or an agency worker. Whereas if you're an employee, you have to follow a particular process, you have to give your notice and things like that. So when their contracts are finally up and we don't renew that contract, it then means they have to wait a 6-month long period before they can go back to Microsoft and back to 343 and work on the Halo. But within that time, you can't expect a contractor to sit around for 6 months with no work, waiting for them to be able to go back to that previous role if they really wanted to. You just can't expect that to happen. So in that time, the contractor will get up and obviously find other work. But that leaves a huge problem internally for 343, and especially the development of that engine. Many of the development and engineering team working on Halo Infinite's Slipspace Engine had left the organization, meaning that new members would need to come in and just figure out what the fuck was going on with all of this mess that was going on in this engine and how it was developed and why it was done in the way that it was. And that can't be easy for anyone to do. For anyone in the world that's just handled something that you've been handed over and you've been told to run with or get familiar with or do what it is, at the beginning you've got absolutely no idea. And if it's really complex, it can take a lot of time figuring it out, doing homework, putting in extra hours to really understand it. And then if them people that come in are also contractors, it's this vicious cycle of people coming in, getting familiar with it, and then leaving the organization. It's not healthy for the development of any game or any infrastructure or engineering team. It's difficult to gauge exactly why things were done in the way that they were, how things were created, what the reasoning behind specific decisions and design decisions were, which were made by people which had left like a year or 2, 3 years before. It's difficult to be able to get answers to those questions. And it just means you're left with this spider web of just endless amounts of shit that you need to try and go through, simplify, and fix. This of course resulted in huge delays for the engine to be anywhere near where we are right now, but Infinite did not have a smooth development period, not even taking into account the engine, just generally the game development was not smooth at all. And it has been rumoured, that the Slipspace engine that Halo Infinite was built upon is a less inferior version of the Slipspace engine as to potentially what we have now, which could be why it's took them so long to get up to speed with things. I mean, the 2018 version of Halo Infinite's reveal trailer wasn't even a playable version of the game. It was outsourced to another company to create and produce. It says it was created with an engine. Whether that's entirely accurate, I'll let you guys be the judge of that. Now, let's move on to 2020, the year of Halo Infinite's initial release and the release of the Xbox Series S and the Xbox Series X, and the year that Joseph Staten returned to work on Halo again. With Tim Longo leaving 343 Industries earlier that year, Bonnie Ross contacted Joe Staten and asked if he'd like to take on the project of Halo Infinite and become the creative lead on that project and potentially going forward as well for additional Halo projects. However, of course, at that time, the story was pretty much complete. The game was pretty much finished as it was. There was no like major story changes that could be made. The map was pretty much already done. The multiplayer was pretty much already developed and produced as well. So when Joseph Staten came in, all he really had to do was oversee the release and overall development within that time period of Halo Infinite. However, when Joseph Staten played through the campaign, he could clearly see that this game was not graphically or technically polished to the standard that it needed to be. A meeting with Bonnie Ross was held with the higher up studio members as well, whereby Joseph explained that this game needed to be delayed. I mean, just from the E3 gameplay trailer that we'd witnessed months prior to this, we could see for ourselves that it was not where it needed to be, with grass textures popping in constantly and even overall textures across the other side of the map when just looking at it and going up these lifts. Animations were really rough and rugged, and of course the birth of Craig as well. There was just not enough detail on the enemy AI. The decision was made by Microsoft's Phil Spencer and the organization's officer group to postpone Halo Infinite until the following year, which was a huge decision to make for Microsoft and Phil Spencer because, for one, the Xbox has been so far behind PlayStation in the previous console generation that Halo Infinite was meant to be this poster boy for the new Xbox console. And without it, it launched with a very lackluster amount of exclusives or titles that excited people. Not to mention either, but COVID really impacted this game early on in development, with the teams needing to pack up all of their things from the office and carry on development at home. It was a learning curve and a tough time across the gaming industry for developers in general. Not to mention that dev tools weren't really something that was meant to be accessible working from home. A lot of dev tools for home working didn't exist before COVID, so a lot of them had to be developed and changed for people to be able to log on from home and do their work. That massively impacted and delayed things for so many development studios and organizations across the gaming industry. So what happened within that year that it was delayed? Well, it was a year of polishing, campaign level and open world cuts, along with just generally figuring out this work from home life. It was a lot for the studio. And to be honest, the game that we did get, I'm really surprised it turned out as good as what it did, campaign-wise anyway. So much was removed from the game, and the remaining elements of the game that the team thought that they could finish within this year, 10-month period, or whatever it might have been, was extremely polished, and I've got to give 343 props for that. The campaign, I never ran into any issues with it when playing through. Even on the co-op flight, nothing at all. I thought the campaign was extremely polished. Yes, there's literally nothing to do on it once you finish the game, but the experience of going through it, no issues at all pretty much. And I'm sure that the majority of people playing through would say that as well. Maybe the odd person may have some issues on PC or connection issues or whatever it might be, but very rarely did I on Halo Infinite's campaign on the Xbox. But in order for them to polish and get this game up to a standard that it was at launch, they had to do this within that year period. So much needs to be removed and sacrificed, and there was even examples of this in the gameplay trailer in 2020. There was one scene in particular where the chief had his helmet and there were 3 lights in his helmet's visor. That was not a part of the campaign. That was a cut portion of the campaign that everyone is wondering whatever that might be, which we just don't know. And that's why we thought potentially it might have been a DLC thing, but I think it was cut from the game, and I don't even want to know the other things that might have been cut that would have been so cool as well. It's, yeah, heart-wrenching, definitely. It could have been offensive bias, it could have been mendicant bias, but it just goes to show that a lot of the story content potentially is backlogged or just cut, and those assets are still there, which potentially we could see going forward if they decide to, of course, still use the Slipspace engine. Remains to be seen. This is why we had the cutting of critical features such as Forge, a progression system, a service record, all of this cool stuff that, you know, we kind of essentially expected to be there, and really just why those features still aren't in Halo Infinite today. The delay year was all hands on deck with the campaign to launch it as polished as possible and to get it to a good standard, and also to deliver a very basic free-to-play multiplayer which would buy 343 some time until the additional features were developed. After all, this was a free-to-play live service multiplayer. They could get away with essentially launching this game with nothing and then adding it over time, because that's what modern gaming is, right? However, around November or December time, to be fair, it was just after Halo Infinite had launched, Microsoft filed for a trademark name, Halo the Endless. At this time, including myself, I thought that this was going to be some form of campaign DLC after completing the game, with Halo the Endless being obviously the title and us meeting the Endless or hearing about them for the first time in Infinite, with Joseph Staten also mentioning that Halo Infinite would have some in-game expansions as well going forward, and that we wouldn't just have this sole campaign mode. This is where a lot of the community, not just myself, did get this sort of thought and theory from. But something did feel off about this, and I've said this in previous videos around this time as well. The game launched in the same month that the trademark was filed. Yes, it might have been for campaign DLC, but if it was, do you not think that Microsoft would have filed that trademark months before or in advance? Do you not think they would have had the idea of this DLC like the beginning of the year? Why are Microsoft filing for a new trademark for a Halo game, or expansion in this case. When a game has just come out, surely it would be under the same name or trademark Halo Infinite and just have different expansions? No? This is what got myself and a lot of the community thinking that something's a bit off here.
I'm pretty sure 343 is working on another Halo project that isn't Halo Infinite. Fairly sure. Not 100%, but...
Fast forwarding to January 2022, numbers on Halo Infinite begin to fall significantly, and with the drop in player count on Steam and just across Xbox and PC as well. And as always with the decline of something really big, rumours always begin to spark, with the main one being that the 10-year plan for Halo Infinite was abandoned internally sometime after Halo Infinite's launch due to development complications and issues. It was also abandoned due to the mass exodus of 343 industry developers leaving the company entirely around that time and beforehand. Another rumour stated that supposedly when Joseph Staten came into the role of creative director at 343 back on the scene in 2020, that he claimed that Halo Infinite wouldn't be getting any story DLC. This was internal and nothing to do with obviously the interviews that he's done in recent times. I'm not 100% sure on when Joseph Staten would have said this, but most things report sometime between August 2020 to Jan 2022. Potentially this is because he didn't want to follow the current path that Tim Longo had with the story around Halo Infinite as well. Maybe he wanted to develop it into something that he wanted to do. So that's potentially why that might have been the case. Again, all rumours, just putting it out there as to what we've seen and what we've heard. A month later in February 2022, news articles began to surface around 343 Industries potentially developing a brand new Halo game, which was heavily influenced by a job post with the company looking for a new producer for a quote, new game in the Halo universe. This sparked massive discussion points across the community, with people wondering why a new producer is needed for a new Halo game when Halo Infinite wasn't even 4 months old. It was initially thought and rumoured to be Halo Wars 3. However, back in 2017, there was a Halo Wars 3 pitch that was delivered to Microsoft higher-ups, which was rejected. This was further confirmed in February 2021 that there were no plans to produce a sequel to Halo Wars 2. So, what could it be? This was where we start to get stories linking back to the trademark name Halo the Endless, along with other trademarks that were fired by Microsoft that go by the name of the Endless. It's all starting to line up now, isn't it? As we progress further and further into the year, industry insiders Randall Thor 19, who have a really interesting podcast type show on YouTube around gaming, the new releases, they are insiders, they hear things, they have sources on what's to come, the future things as well, so I'll leave a link below, it's really interesting, you can go check it out if you want to. But they began to start talking around Halo and Microsoft. They started by reinstating the fact that COVID literally killed a massive quantity of Halo Infinite's development, and not just Halo Infinite, but Tatanka also.
Still don't know how much of a dent COVID's put in a lot of launch plans. I've heard, for example, Tatanka, the gameplay mode, the battle royale light, chaotic sort of Warzone kind of mode that's coming to Halo. We're supposed to have had that already. That was supposed to have launched months ago.
Really?
We've actually supposed to have had the first content update for it by now.
Tatanka should have been something that came out around the time that Halo Infinite had released. Similar to Warzone, I believe Warzone came out a couple of months after the initial release of Modern Warfare 2019, and Tatanka was meant to do a similar thing with Halo Infinite. They only speak about Halo Infinite very briefly, but the bits that they do say, yeah, it's worth listening to. We then progressed a little bit further on into the year, and the likes of Bonnie Ross announced that she was leaving 343 for family medical reasons. The Certain Affinity COO coming out and saying that there are over 100 developers working on a new Halo project, which is besides Halo Infinite, and that of course is Tatanka, which will be separate to Infinite. Again, it will act like Warzone does with Call of Duty. Tatanka will be a complete separate download, as opposed to any of the new Halo games or IPs that come out around that. But even with his speech, more rumours around the Slipspace Engine were floating around the Tinterweb. So much speculation and rumours for Halo Infinite in this engine. Let's dive into that. There are leaks and rumours that Certain Affinity's Halo mode won't run on the Slipspace Engine, which blew my mind when I read it yesterday, but will use the Unreal Engine. Now, I'm not sure about the validity of this rumour, I'm really not. And I don't see why they would move to the Unreal Engine and then have Halo Infinite and potentially future Halo games running on Slipspace. It doesn't make any sense to me, because it's all about sort of cross customization, isn't it? With Vanguard and Warzone, you can buy something on Vanguard and it will work on Warzone. You can buy something on Warzone and it will work on Vanguard. With Unreal and Slipspace, you would have to really invest in having them to talk to each other. And why would you do that when you could just have two games on the same engine? I don't know if this is going to be right or if this rumor is correct. There are also chats stating that Tatanka uses the Slipspace engine, but a more complete version that was used in Halo Infinite. Again, don't shoot the messenger, I'm just reporting the news here. For me, it doesn't make sense that they would use Unreal. I think that it will be on Slipspace, but it'll be a heavily modified version of Slipspace. We'll have to wait and see though. Which of course brings us then to current day. As of September the 14th, a gaming industry analyst named Rithian tweeted this: "Heard Microsoft are not happy with 343, apparently looking to gut a good amount of the studio and rebuild for a new Halo project aimed for 2026 and 2027, with an internal release date within 343 aimed at 2025. Look, this is not shocking to me in the slightest, and 343 probably have scrapped Halo Infinite's 10-year plan internally. This game was meant to be the poster boy for the new Xbox and the big selling exclusive, but it never really turned out that way. Halo Infinite's development, terrible internal staffing policies, and the continuous turnover of staff, which, by the way, even Phil Spencer mentioned in an article months and months ago that he wasn't worried about the turnover of the staff in 343 because it's just a part of the gaming industry. Yes, it might be, but when you have a game as big as Halo and a franchise as big as Halo for a console such as the Xbox, whereby staff members are being turned over like you're flipping over a pillow to lay on the cold side of it, you can't expect smooth development or an end product. If I was Phil Spencer, I would have been shitting my pants and doing everything that I could to find room in the budget to hire permanent staff for this project of Halo Infinite and to get them in a really good working rhythm. Because we've seen in the past, if Halo does well, the Xbox does well. Obviously, the Xbox is still doing pretty well. I'm not saying it's doing badly, but if Halo Infinite was doing better, the Xbox would probably be doing better. This is just me speaking on what looks pretty obvious to me, but I think that Microsoft are having huge shifts in personnel at 343 because of one reason in particular. Bonnie Ross departing her role, whether it being a family emergency or medical issue or other reasons, I don't want to speculate on that, but I'll leave that down to your decision. With David Berger, who was responsible for the development of the Slipspace Engine, also announcing his departure from the company, who's been with the company, by the way, since 2008, whilst also including as well Halo Infinite's art director Nicholas Sparth and head of design Jerry Hook, leaving the organisation too. There is such a clear intervention from Microsoft here. And personally for me, I think Halo Infinite is being worked on by a skeleton crew within 343, which is why they're having so many resource problems when fixing the likes of desync quickly or whatever this might be. 343 Industries have approximately 450 employees, give or take, working for them as of now. You're telling me that 450 employees is not enough to fix server lag and desync, or develop, polish, and add Forge, a ranking system, Mash XP? Look, in comparison to the likes of Bungie, they have almost double the amount of staff, nearly equating to around 850 to 900 staff members, which is probably why they can produce content much quicker than the way that 343 Industries have been able to do. But if 343 want to be in a position like Destiny and like Bungie, Microsoft need to throw serious money and investment at this studio and to make them like that. Or reshuffle what they're doing in 343, which is what they're doing right now. The approach to Halo is not working, and who sets that approach? The management, the directors, everyone at the very top. A lot of those have now moved on, and new people are coming in. The future of Halo Infinite has got to be different from this point on, and with new people coming into these roles, I really do believe that it will be. So I'm excited to see where this franchise goes. How long it will take before we get that, I don't know. It's going to be a long time, I think, before we get something new for Halo. Unfortunately, it's just how it is at this point. I would rather wait for change to come rather than just not have it and be miserable for the rest of my life with Halo. So yeah, that's a positive, I suppose. In summary, Halo Infinite is not in a good state right now, and this game may not be the 10-year game that we all expected. I mean, when was the last time you heard 343 mention that? You've got to line it up with the new release of a new console. The next Xbox console will be launching around 2027, 2028, give or take. So we could have a new game launching with that console. So that's also going to determine when the next game, if there will be one before that, launches. Will they just go all balls to the wall with Halo from now on up until 2027? Or will there be a game before that, say in 2025, and then have another one in 2027? However, also you've got to think about, at that point, Microsoft would probably have acquired the Call of Duty franchise and Activision as well. So who knows where Halo is going to be at that point? Could it be at the bottom of the pecking order? Could it still be where it is? Could Call of Duty be the new poster boy for Xbox? It'll be sad if that's the case, but we just don't know. But as I said at the start, these are all rumours, words from insiders. Nothing is confirmed here. But I'm bringing you guys this information that's happened from the beginning of development all the way up until now, because everybody deserves to understand and decide what the fuck is happening to Halo for themselves. But guys, it has been a long video. I appreciate everyone sticking by if you're still here at this point. Let me know down below what you do think of this. I'm very interested to know what you think of what we've spoken about today. Do you think Halo the Endless is a whole new game for Halo Infinite? Do you think it's an expansion for Halo Infinite? Do you think this is Halo 7, if you will? What do you think Halo the Endless is? And what do you think about 343's management reshuffle and Microsoft's intervention of that? Let me know everything you would think down below, everyone. It's been a long one. I appreciate everyone sticking by. So without further ado, we'll see everyone in the next video.